Morning, everyone. Before we really start, I'd just like to explain, if you've noticed there's no flowers on the coffin, don't think the family are tight asses. John's words always were, "I hate bloody flowers." But on behalf of John's family, I welcome you as we gather to remember, give thanks, and honour the life of John Patrick Costa, known to most of us here simply as John. And I thank John's family for asking me to lead this service for John today. We're here as a close group of family and friends, and we're here to support each other in our sadness, and especially to Craig, David, Mark and your families. We extend to you our sincerest thoughts of love, care and concern. And today we're gathering to grieve the loss of John, but also to celebrate the fullness of his life. And while our sorrow is deep and our hearts heavy, we will not allow the shadow of death to hide the many ways John touched our lives. His love, his kindness and the memories he gave us will forever remain with us, filling our hearts with meaning and gratitude. Though he is no longer with us, his spirit lives on in the lasting impact he made on each of us. Today, there'll be plenty of memories shared, and it's going to bring back to you the times that you spent with John. But for everyone here, you all had a special relationship with him. As a father and father-in-law of Craig and Lisa, and David and Mark, a Poppy John of Soroya, Kingsley, Maguire and Kelly, and Big Pop of Mariki Lee, Indiella and Bobby, as a loved brother, brother-in-law and uncle of Ellen and family, Bill's family, Colin's family, and all of the O'Kane families, and it's simply just a great mate to us all. It's now my pleasure to invite Soroya, Maguire and Kelly to come up and pay their tribute.
I just did something. Sorry, guys. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming today to sharing our goodbyes to my Poppy, John Costa. Although this day comes with great sadness, I want to enjoy Pop's many moments of life well lived, with happiness and joy shared with many of you joining us today. Further, to take time later to share your own memories, as I know there will be many. To you, he was known by many things, whether it was the ticket inspector of the Hunter trains, the Flying Bowls member, and the list continues. But to me, he was my Poppy John, or later in life, Mariki Lee, Indiella, and Bobby's Big Pop. I can remember from a very young age, joining Pop still in darkness, getting ready for work, but now being older and having my own children, being older and having my own children, thinking, how did he have me being a toddler, talking his ear off at 4 a.m. in the morning, almost every morning. All of us grandchildren share memories of getting to feed the magpies with Pop, even sitting on his knee while he had us on the other. As I grew, I took many joys in taking the opportunities I got to scare Pop, hiding in numerous places and positions, waiting the opportunity to jump out. My response over time went from bloody hell child to you little shit as I grew. Pop's second home, as we all know, was Maitland City, which over the years I spent many different family occasions there. But when old enough, I was given the opportunity to join the Club Maitland City family. It didn't take very long for all the members to know I was John Costa's granddaughter, as it was something he shared proudly. But I'll never forget my first shift and Pop standing in front of the bar saying, "Right, kid, whatever happens here, your grandmother doesn't need to know." I got to go from growing up watching you arrive home on the bus to serving you and making sure you got on the bus. I would make sure every Wednesday night you had your plastic bags with the meat trays for the flying bowls so you didn't have to go searching, and you'd often up me if I wasn't there on a Wednesday night after that. Or I would sneak out the back for a quick chat, all memories I would cherish forever. I'm grateful for the things you have done for me, school pickups turned into work ones, for attending musicals that I know you would have hated, zoo trips, and all the shopping trips that you took Grandma and I on. And everything else in between, for always listening to my rants, especially over the last few years, probably not having a clue what I was saying, but nonetheless taking the time to listen, for being an amazing big pop to my children and all their own memories they got to share with you, especially evolving around sharing your cookies with them, as it became a regular routine for Big Pop's visits. I made a promise to Grandma close to 3 years ago, standing right here, that I would spend the rest of my life trying to make her proud, and I'm grateful you got to see me trying to do that and watch me find my career within being able to help others. My promise to you is, even in the hardest of times, I won't give up. I'm at peace knowing that you are both together again. Even in sadness of losing you, I hope Grandma went easy on you and hasn't had too many bones to pick with you. Until we meet again, our love for you will remain endless and we will continue to miss you dearly. Love always, Mariki Lee, Indiella, Bobby and I.
Visiting Pop was always special. Pop didn't care much to see Mum and Dad, but he absolutely loved seeing us grandkids. His biscuit box was always full and the crystal bowl in the centre of the table was always overflowing with lollies of all kinds. On one occasion, when Dad and I visited Pop, he was making coffee and offered me a biscuit. Pop said, "There's Tim Tams," so naturally I said, "Yes, please." Pop handed me the packet of caramel Tim Tams. I didn't have the heart to tell him that I didn't like caramel, but Dad knew this. So not to offend Pop, I ate the Tim Tam. But then, Pop offered me a second caramel Tim Tam. Again, not wanting to offend Pop, I politely accepted a second caramel Tim Tam. On a return visit to Pop's, Dad and Pop were having a coffee, and Pop says to me, "Cal, want a biscuit?" And Dad said, "Yeah, she really enjoyed the caramel ones." So yet again, I felt compelled to eat the caramel Tim Tam. But this time, Dad finally fessed up, saying to Pop, "Dad, I've really been enjoying giving Callie a hard time. She really doesn't like the caramel Tim Tams." Pop said, "Why the bloody hell didn't you tell me?" Pop, if you never ever found out that I didn't like caramel Tim Tams, I'd have continued to eat them with you. It still hasn't kicked in that when we go to your house, you won't be sitting at the table with a crossword in your hand, waiting to give me a cuddle and probably offer me some more caramel Tim Tams. Instead, it's just going to be an empty house, a space where you once were, now silent without you.
My turn, hey? Firstly, I want to thank you all for being here. Our family has been showered with love since Pop's passing, and we just want to say a massive thank you. And for those who have travelled to be here or taken time off work to come, it hasn't gone unnoticed. Pop would have loved to see you all. For those who don't know me, I am Maggie. I am the eldest granddaughter of Craig and Lisa and the second granddaughter for Lil and John. I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet, as I'm sure we all have stories about Poppy John that we could talk about for hours on end. Pop was a very tall and bigger bloke than most others, but for us grandkids, he was the most kind-hearted, most loving grandfather a grandchild could ever wish for. On arrival to Grandma and Pop's house, us grandkids were always met with the tightest squeeze from Pop, which definitely felt like he could easily snap one of our ribs, with a massive feast of food from Grandma on the table. Pop was a simple man. Walking into Pop's, you could almost bet money he'd be sitting down and completing a puzzle in the daily paper. Now, I'm not sure that my help as a young child went very far or was even very helpful at all, but he always let us have a go. I'm sure for the majority of our childhood, we gave Pop bogus answers, and you'd think by now I've figured out how to do Sudoku, but I still have no clue. Besides Pop's love for puzzles and beer, which I'll touch on in a bit, Pop would often take us out to feed the resident magpies. Although as a child, and somewhat as an adult, birds scared the pants off me, but with Pop it was different. I would sit there on Pop's lap as he fed them, because if there was any place not to be scared of anything, especially a small, feathery, flapping, sharp-beaked wild animal, it was in the arms of my gentle giant grandfather. Sorry, Pops, I'm not feeding your resident magpie, now you're gone. 7 months after my 18th birthday, we had just lost Grandma. I had deferred uni and was freshly out of a relationship. Lost and unsure of what to do, I frantically started applying for jobs. I came across an ad for a Sydney Rail driver and guard. Remembering that Pops had spent most of his time working life on the rail, I was keen to apply and see how far I'd go. I went through a very tiring interview process that consisted of what I thought to be many useless exams, panel interviews, one-on-one interviews, medicals, you name it, I had to do it. After finally passing and getting the email that I had been accepted into a lifetime job, as Dad called it, I was more than excited to call Pop and tell him that I was following in his footsteps, so I did just that. So here goes. I ring Pop. Hey Pop, it's Maggie. Hello Maggie, it's Pop. What do you want, my girl? I continued to tell him the exciting news that I had been accepted into Sydney Rail as a train guard. Well, why the bloody hell would you do that? Was how Pop congratulated me. Taken aback with Pop's response, I was questioning what I had gotten myself into. After a while of what seemed like me convincing him of a job that I had never done before and that he had done his whole life, he was somewhat proud, but still confused as to why I chose the railway and not some safe office job. Seriously confused and a bit offended that Pop wasn't happy with my news, I followed the phone call up by having a conversation with Dad. Discussing my disappointment about Pop's reaction, Dad soon pointed out to me that it wasn't that Pop wasn't proud of my achievements, but that he was worried for me, as the rail is one job that you will encounter every type of person and having to deal with them. It's a whole different type of dangerous and scary world, even more scary than magpies. Pop has seen and dealt with the worst of the job, and most often than not, fights would entail. Pop came around. I think he was happy that he had someone to talk to about all his years spent on the railway and that it made sense to me. But I quit, not long after. Sorry again. When I started seeing my now partner Chris, I had travelled up here by myself to surprise Pop. Not many knew about me having a new male friend, so I thought it'd be the perfect time to break the news in person. So I tracked Pop down to his local watering hole. I surprised him as he had no idea I was coming up from Wollongong. He was over the moon. I sit and have a drink with him and all his pub friends, who I have no idea. I don't think Pop introduced me to any of them. And I sit until my uncles arrive. As the boys were getting drinks, I told Pop that I was seeing someone new. After wanting a very in-detail description of Chris, I showed him a photo because I couldn't explain any more detail. Somewhat shocked at the amount of tattoos that Chris has, and to add that he speaks fluent Macedonian, as that's his background, Pop was very unsure of him. I promised Pop that Chris would definitely drink a Tui's New with him, unlike me, providing that that conversation was very funny and educational. Pop was sold on the Tui's New part and was keen to meet Chris, so my plan was in action. Not long after, Chris and Pop met for the first time. In true John style, he pulls out the previous partner's name and greets Chris as that. Embarrassment swallowing me up in its entirety, I start to think of ways to tell Chris that Pop has dementia and I myself just diagnosed it. Chris wasn't fazed, so he soldiered on. But still to this day, we are unsure whether Pop was pulling Chris's leg or if he had actually forgotten Chris's name and resorted to what he remembered. Little did we know that after this, every time we would see Pop, he would greet Chris with, "Well, who the bloody hell are you?" Again, for a while there, we weren't sure if my dementia diagnosis was actually true or if he was just having a laugh. Eventually, Chris got the hang of it and he'd reply with, "Hey mate," putting the biggest grin on both of the boys' faces, and then Pop knew he couldn't fool us, but I never stopped him from trying. Pop's choice in alcohol was questionable. As a young girl who enjoys a beer, I tried several times to try and enjoy a 2 years new with Pop. Yet each time it'd be pointed out that I haven't finished it and it had gone warm. I eventually ran out of excuses as to why it was still sitting there. "Well, nah, Pop, I do like it. I'm just a slow drinker." "Nah, Pop, I like it. I just keep forgetting I've got a drink." "Nah, Pop, it's fine. It's just really cold and it hurts my teeth." I eventually had to come clean to Pop and tell him I didn't like them. This came as no shock to Pop. I think he was just happy not to see any more of his beer go to waste, which was not a thing with Pop. Beer was too good to let it go warm, and my golly Pop could sink some. As a fresh 18-year-old, I thought for sure I'd be able to outdrink him. I'm younger, more mobile, yet each time I finished my first drink, Pop was starting his third. Which brings me to the story of my 21st. Well, actually, let's start on my 20th. Pop had travelled down to Wollongong with Mark for my 20th. As excited as I was confused as to why they came down for my 20th, as it's not a big birthday and I didn't really have anything planned. I then found out it's because Pop thought it was my 21st and he wanted to be there. But then my real 21st came around. I had thrown a party, sent out invites, and Pop came down. This was the night that I realised no matter what Pop's mobility was, is that after a drink or two, he is up on the dance floor. Pop had mixed himself in with my work colleagues, friends and family that were all having a boogie. Pop by this stage was definitely a couple beers deep. As Dad says, his centre of gravity was compromised and Pop hit the deck, smacking his head on a chair on the way down. Pop was fussed over and quickly fixed up with a band-aid and told to stop dancing. Dad then took him back to their house to get some rest. Or didn't he just stack it? Pop ended up in hospital with a broken hip, and as he was down our way, the injury happened at my party and I felt somewhat responsible. So I took time off and went into the hospital to visit him. Sitting there with Mum and my little sister Callie, the discussion of mobile phones came up. Pop wasn't so much interested, but I think us girls were going to talk to him about them anyway. Pop at the time had a new phone and he couldn't quite figure out how to answer calls. But the more I explained it, the more confused Pop looked. So I did what anyone would do and I said, "Pop, I'm going to call your phone so I can show you how to answer it. But it's going to be me, so you don't need to talk. You can just answer it and then hang up." "All right," he says. Still not so interested and fairly confused, Pop agrees to answer the phone. So I get my phone out, I click his name, I show him that I've called him. My name pops up on his phone. I point out that it's me, I'm sitting next to him, and that it's my name because he didn't have his glasses. I explained to Pop that all he has to do is press the green phone button to be able to answer my call and hear me through the phone. Pop presses the button, puts the phone up towards his ear, and before I can say anything, he goes, "Hello?" Trying not to laugh at him, I start explaining that it is just me and I'm sitting right next to him. Pop's still confused. He continues talking to me through the phone. So in order to end the conversation, I put my phone up to my ear. I talk to Pop, even though I'm sitting literally in arm's distance. I'm almost certain that Pop still had no idea what actually happened and how to answer his phone. I don't think words can describe the love we have for Poppy John, especially us as grandchildren. We are blessed to have Pop join our guardian angel team, and we will miss the sound of his walking stick or trying to dodge the stick, when we probably deserve that smack. His tight hugs, his ability to dance after a couple beers, and his ability to stack it. His mounds of puzzles on the table, which he used to hide grammar at one point. His way of saying, "Who's he?" after you've literally said anything to him. And the way he'd end his phone calls with, "Right you are," instead of "bye." Pop, you left a void in our lives and not even Tui's or Coronas can fill. I hope you're enjoying Grandma's cooking up there and the endless supply of beers, puzzles, and the lack of mobile phones. I love it always.
Thanks, girls, and now, Craig, it's your time to come up and share your memories.
Actually, Soroya triggered a memory too. We got that speech about when I was old enough to go to Maitland City about your mother doesn't need to know anything, especially back before mobile phones. And quite often you'd hear the announcement, anyone's name, it'd be John Costa phone in the foyer. That's when the beer would go down, you go straight out the member's door. When you get home, you weren't allowed to say, if Mum had asked, I wasn't sure what time he left, Mum. So we had Dad, Pa, Poppy John, Big Pop, Mr. C, John, Johnny, Jake, Jakey, Blue and Red, and the one he reserved for himself that no one else was allowed to use, on occasions like stub toes, bashed shins, or if he missed the nail and hammered his thumb, oh, you stupid red-headed bastard. It started in Balranald in November 44 for Dad. He grew up on a 52,000 acre sheep station called Wybury in Ivanhoe, central New South Wales. With his dad, my nan, having lost his actual mum when he was very young, and his three siblings, Ellen, Bill and Colin. Uncle Bill and Uncle Colin now passed. Uncle Bill and Dad, or Jakey as Uncle Bill would call him, looked more like twins, both being strapping redhead country larrikins. Dad was either at school or working on the station. He was billeted in Narromine for his junior schooling and a boarder at the Morris Brothers College, Red Bend, Forbes for his high schooling. In both situations, Dad was subject to cruel and unusual punishments from callous disciplinarians. But Dad and Uncle Bill would not cower, which occasionally caused escalation, but only strengthened their resolve for mischief. The college is surrounded by the Lachlan River on three sides. And on occasion, as we've been told, at night they would sneak out, they or Dad, and swim across the river holding their clothes above their heads and then walk to town naked until they were dry enough to put their clothes back on for whatever event had attracted them to town. I asked Dad how he dried himself on the return journey, because getting out of the river, it's only a short distance to the dorms, and he would say, I wouldn't swim the river, I'd walk through the front gates, I didn't bloody care if they caught me coming back in. Daily life on the station, the outback, and holding his own at school started to temper the man Dad was to become. Hard, tough, not quick to moan, with simple desires where family, community, playing sports with mates, and beers with mates were most cherished. Dad joined the railway in Ivanhoe as a teen for what became a 49-year career in this New South Wales State Rail. And while he loved the families and the people and mates of Ivanhoe, he did not love sheep and the yakka that came with it. Uncle Bill, a shearer, would tease, wherever the work was, Jake wasn't. So in 63, at the age of 19, he moved to the Hunter Valley and he worked at Maitland Railway Station, initially in the goods yard. And while you and I might calculate our breaks as 15 minutes or 45 minutes, Dad calculated his as 2 schooners till the next goods train, or 3, from the vantage of the Green Junction or the Caledonian Hotel, or the Cali. That's the pub you're named after. Uncle Ted says Dad turned up to footy training one arvo, white as a ghost. He had fallen on the tracks and he had managed to delay the Cessnock Express almost being run over. The astonishing thing about that story was there was such a thing called the Cessnock Express, or the fact that back then people wanted to go to Cessnock fast, apparently, I don't know why. A side note on the Cali, apart from you being named after the Cali, back in the day before electronic banking, Dad was paid by cheque. And the best weekends, for David and I at least, were when Mum's working coincided with Dad's payday, because then he'd have to take us down to the Cali with him for Dickie Jones to cash his cheque. We'd get left in the car, he'd bring out 2 fire engines and 2 packets of chips, and we'd sit there eating them while Dad went back into the pub to have 2 schooners. As he explained to Mum more than once, it'd be rude to expect the man to cash your cheque without buying something. As you try leaving your kids locked in the car with the windows cracked these days without getting arrested. Dad loved playing rugby league. He was a great forward. He had started in high school playing for Morris Brothers and won a collection of pennants from the Cobar, Dubbo and Riverina carnivals. One of my earliest memories is standing at the Maitland football ground, freezing, watching the Pickers play. I was just tall enough to pull Dad's quilted jacket around the side of my head, trying to keep warm. The smell of beer and tobacco is still oddly comforting. In 1961, he played for the Ivanhoe Reserve Grade and won the best and fairest. In 62, he played for the Ivanhoe Reserve Grade and first grade. But now in the Hunter in 1963, boarding with the Heatons in Taro, Dad became best mates with their son Adrian, aka Slab, and played football with Slab and Mum's brother, Uncle Ted. Slab went on to be Dad's best man and coincidentally my godfather, had he turned up. From 1963 to 1965, Dad played for Beresfield in the Maitland Junior League, and he also played in the Maitland Under-20s rep team in 63 and 64. From 1966 to 1973, Dad played for Beresfield in the Newcastle second division comp, and in 66 they won the grand final and Dad won the Vernie Small Memorial Trophy. In 67 they were beaten in the grand final, and in 68 they were beaten in the final, but Dad won the WD and H.O. Willis Trophy for best and fairest. In 69 they made it to the semi-finals, and in 72 Dad won the N. Wallace Trophy for best forward, and in 73 they made it back to the grand final, but they were defeated. Somewhere in the late 60s, Dad, Slab and Uncle Ted went to a dance at the Hexham Bowling Club, according to Uncle Ted, one of the only places to go back then. Slab spied Mum and proposed to win her that night, but Dad frustrated poor old Slab and got in the way, winning Mum over instead. Funny thing is, as Uncle Ted says, Dad then had to ask to borrow Slab's car to drive Mum home. They were married in 1970, had me in 71, that's 9 months well past when they were married, Dad in 74 and Mark in 78. Dad was old school, and a lot of memorable stories of him are about how tough or strong he was. He certainly was an imposing figure. Mum went into labour with me on game day, so Dad decided to play anyway. And he ran onto the field, but unbeknownst to most, quietly in pain with appendicitis, and of course they burst mid-game. He was rushed to hospital. Mum was in one part of Maitland Hospital giving birth, while Dad was in another part of Maitland Hospital having an appendectomy. They had to wheelchair him down to see Mum or his wife and son. They bought a house in Rutherford around 72, where they lived for 50 and almost 53 years. A home that contains all the love, laughter, heartache and wisdom of living a good life. Then many an antique at Dad's expense at the hands of Mum, the only person who could get away with it. I told stories at Mum's service of Dad coming home from the club, falling asleep in the lounge, and Mum getting frustrated. Well, we all used to get frustrated. Ask questions about the movie, fall asleep, start snoring, pisses all off. But some of those stories in the lounge room is Mum writing dickhead across his forehead in Artliner Texter, silly old fool across his bald spot another time, painting his face with zinc cream like an American Indian and taking photos and putting it in the paper for his 60th or whatever it was. Nearly choking him when she was playing with a golf marker and accidentally dropped it in his mouth between snores. Or with the brothers tipping the recliner over and trapping him. One other story, Lisa watched Dad across the table one night, flicking and scratching at the under edge of his plate of his reheated meal that Mum had prepared until he come home from the club. And he was trying to look under it for ages until Mum exclaimed, "It hasn't got Glad wrap on it, you bloody fool." Lisa and Dad lost it and belly laughed for the next 10 minutes at him trying to flick Glad wrap off or get the edge of it that wasn't even there. With the move to Rutherford, Maitland City Bowling Club became Dad's beloved local. Badge number 105. Rumour has it he was lined at the bar and waiting for his beer while they were still waiting for the paint and the grout to dry. So loved, this club, we counted and it's revised, it was 66, last night it's actually now 68, polo shirts in Dad's closet associated with Maitland City Bowling Club. That's all he had. Be it bowls, flying bowls, cricket, social club, you name it. 68 polo shirts. The club was a source of many great mates, great times, laughs and sport. Dad wasn't bad at cricket in his day either. He played cricket for the club. Lisa's brother, Stephen, shared. John took the best catch ever off my bowling. The big fella was fielding at point and I was bowling to a lefty. Mid-air diving, full stretch to his right. No one could believe he did it, neither could he. A dead set classic catch, even if it was taken at test level. In 1989, when I started the ANZ Bank at Beresfield, A customer saw my nameplate and asked if I was Blue's son and started to praise his cricketing feats. That customer it would have been at least 15 years since he saw Dad play cricket in Beresfield, which at the time I didn't even know that he had played cricket in Beresfield. Dad was an uncomplicated man with simple rules and values. Always carry a handkerchief, a pen and a notepad. A hot shower takes the sting out of sunburn. He believed that one until he died, no matter how often we try to convince him that's not how you treat burns. Always give a firm handshake, which actually got my first job at Bullens at 14 because he insisted I shake the hand of the man I saw. Apparently why Jock Perry gave me the job. If at Maitland City with mates and we saw Dad coming to say g'day, Nick would check to see that his signet ring wasn't sideways between his fingers to avoid having them nearly broken by Dad. I only saw Dad cry 2.5 times. He cried at his dad's funeral, but not till the end when the funeral director used to walk the hearse out to the edge of town and an impatient P-plate had cut into the procession in front of us. I learnt some new words that day. The half was when we'd tell him of the next grandchild coming. He'd get a little glassy eye but not quite cry. And then the last time, the night Mum died. He begged her to come back and not leave him alone. And of course at a funeral. But then, after Mum died, we'd call on Dad and have lunch. And on one of these occasions, sitting at the table, I looked to see what was in the gift bag that was in the centre of the table that we'd eaten around many times. It was Mum's ashes. From the day that Pete delivered them to Dad, he sat him on the table and sat down and did his puzzle. And we'd, unbeknownst, all been eating lunch around Mum for a couple of visits. Later, when Dad, not a superstitious man, was hearing noises in the house that he'd never heard before, he locked her in the second bedroom. Adamant Mum was haunting him. One thing he wasn't good at was technology, as Maggie sort of said. He never had an email address, and everything was done in cash. In the early days, to save getting up, Mark would use his mobile to call the landline, which Dad would come in to answer. No one there, but then Mark would ask him to pass something or get something for him while he was up. Eventually, he got his own dumb Nokia, and one day found it odd that 3 parked cars in a row had their alarms going off when he walked past, eventually realising it was the phone in his top pocket. Or times while playing solitaire on Mum's iPad, clicked on a notification and freaked different grandkids out at different times who received a liked or love reaction to something from their dead grandma. Mark bought him a smartphone last year. He had to update. The other one stopped working, which he never got the hang of. He wouldn't answer my calls for 2 days in a row, so I called the landline, which he answered straight away. I called the mobile while we were talking. The screen's changing colour, but it's not ringing, he says. David checked, and somehow he had managed to mute it in the settings. David bought him another dumb Nokia for Christmas to solve the problem. Mark logged into all his streaming services, his own streaming services on Dad's TV for him. When he was homebound, after he broke his pelvis at Maggie's 21st, in last September, October. Later on, Mark discovered that Dad had somehow managed to sign him up for a new service. So to finish off, we go back to Dad's career and the second half of which he was best known for when a revenue protection officer or a ticket snapper. When they cried, "Tickets, tickets please," on the old Rare Rattler would send some scrambling to the toilets or the last carriage. Badge number 105, which coincidentally is the same badge number as Maitland City. Don't know if that's by design or just that's the way it worked. This is what some people have shared in the days. Maggie said the outpouring of love, which was beautiful. So Maggie Costa, he had a go at me when I joined the trains. Anthony Tyndall, mate from high school, he was one of the good ones, and he knew all us Rutherford and Tulare kids. Mark Campbell, David's mate from high school. I remember trying to hide from him by closing all the blinds on the train carriage when Dave and I wagged school and went to Newcastle. Busted. Daniel Fisher, his nephew, he was such a scary sight on the trains, never quite got in trouble, but I also knew better. His niece, Jacqueline O'Kane. Uncle John caught me smoking with mates from school on the way home from Maitland Station to Thornton one afternoon. He gave me his look, I nearly died of fright. And he said, "I will call your mother after work." Well, I ran straight home to tell Mum what happened. You know, he never called Mum. He was like, "Haha, told you." You told her, I didn't have to. Bless him, love him always. His niece, Karen O'Kane. Myself, Leanne and Gail used to ride our push bikes from Dad's in Horseshoe Bend to Maitland Rail train station on the weekend to hopefully see Uncle John. He was always happy and gave us hugs and was always smiling. Jenny Cowling, neighbourhood, a girl we grew up in the same street, he would always say hello to us as we got off or on the train at Talara. JJ, great friend that I worked with at ANZ Bank and we lived together, shared a flat in Sydney. Your dad was a scary fecker, he didn't write fecker, on the trains, laugh out loud. He only got me once and that was enough. Nearly pooped my pants when you introduced him years later. My favourite story is when you were out on a bender till 7:30 Friday morning and Johnny still encouraged you to turn around and get your ass to work. I still chuckle at that one. Damien Smith from high school. Me and Brendan Sheldon got caught with no ticket by your dad when we were about 14. He took us off the train at Barrow to book us. Smell bolted and I followed, jumped off the platform and over the fence. He yelled at us to come back, but knew it was futile and went inside. After that, I would pull a weird face when I saw him so he wouldn't recognise me. Kerry Gillard went to high school with Lisa and we worked together at Bullens. Was always happy to see him on the first train on a Saturday morning on my way to work and all the all-night drinkers getting their way home after missing the last train on a Friday night. Mr. Costa was my saviour for a few stations at least. Judy Costa, his niece. Remembering seeing Uncle Johnny on the train twice, both times the school kids would yell out, "Hey, there's Alf from Home and Away." Jason Brimble, schoolmate. I used to hide my ticket to stir the big fella up, and then at the last minute produce it. Another clip over the ear would follow. John Harris, my mate and best man. I still laugh how he used to check my ticket on the train coming home from Sydney using my mate's uni card for a discount. "Ticket please, John." He checks the ticket, gives it back. "Thanks, Philip." Scott Coster, his nephew. Had a flashback of Uncle John harassing me on the train back in the 80s. Stern hand on the shoulder and a loud voice. "Scott Coster, what are you doing?" I shit myself. David Bartlett, high school mate. "Sorry to hear about your dad, bro. He used to terrorise us on the trains. He was a good guy." Fiona Ryan, his niece. For the summer break after her second year at uni, Fiona got a job in Sydney during the week while trying to keep her waitressing jobs in Newcastle. She writes, "I was couch surfing at my sister's apartment in Gosford and travelling up and back to Newcastle each shift, swinging through a friend's house for a shower in between day shift and night shifts. When I told Uncle John about my plans for the summer, he warned me with furrowed brow not to take the train back to Gosford after the midnight Saturday night shift, as there were a lot of hooligans out at the time. Well, sure enough, as all young kids do, I heard his advice and ignored it. And sure enough, there was a ruckus on the train this one night, and there was Uncle John sorting it out in the middle of it. I tried to slump into my seat so that he wouldn't see me, but being one of the most sober and quietest in the carriage, I just stood out a tad. There was no "I told you so" chat. He just sat next to me all the way to Fassifern or wherever it was he jumped off for the next inspection or ruckus to sort out. I dearly loved my Uncle John and Auntie Lil. He was absolutely one of a kind. So that's it. And while some of us are struggling with the suddenness and the total lack of warning at Dad's death, please, if you can, take solace in the fact he lived a life full of love and laughter, and he had no regrets. And even in the hours before going, he was enjoying a beer in Queensland with some of his favourite people and even making friends. He had his 3 boys around him, with him and the most of the rest of his family, and he simply drifted off to sleep and went to be with Mum. Although, one last thing, as of this morning, we can officially share the cause of death was Queensland beer. Sorry, Uncle Frank. And I have to acknowledge, if that got a laugh, I had to say that came from him. That was Mark's line, that one. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Craig. It's our own memories of John that will keep him alive in our hearts, and we're just going to listen to a few songs and as we enjoy some happy memories of his life, and just take a little bit of time in your own way to reflect and give thanks for his life. Some great photos there. And remembering those who feel John's death the most, Craig, David, Mark, and all of his family. May you be granted strength, wisdom and thanksgiving, strength to bear your loss, wisdom to find meaning and purpose in the design of life, and thanksgiving for John's life. May forgiveness and acceptance lead us to a meaning in which all things are comprehended and hopefully great peace. And I'd now like to invite anyone who wants to join with me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. And may you who knew and loved John most deeply find comfort in the embrace of divine compassion. May John's family be surrounded by one another's love, finding the strength in the bond you share. Your profound sadness brings with it a rare empathy, a compassion that assures you that though the pain is great, you're never alone. And find comfort in all who mourn alongside you. We too share in your sadness, and we're here to offer our support, extending to you the compassion that unites humanity. And in times of loss, may we take comfort in knowing that there are things in this world that never fade, but live on forever in the embrace of nature. The gentle whisper of the wind, the refreshing touch of rain, the warmth of sunlight. All of these, timeless and unchanging, offer us glimpses of the eternal. And in these moments, we're reminded that love and memory endure, carried forever in the beauty that surrounds us. And now, on behalf of John's family, I thank everyone for being here today. Your support is appreciated, and we've honoured a lovely and rich life. We know it's impossible to do justice to John's life in a short service like this, so I invite you to join the family at Maitland City Bowling Club afterwards for refreshments, but please continue sharing his story. Our service is now going to conclude with our words of committal, and that'll be followed by a song, and I think his mates from Maitland City and bowling rivals and foes and teammates would like to form a guard of honour for the family. So when the music starts, you can make your way through the door, fellas, if you'd like. Though our sorrow is great, we're glad that John's life filled our lives and enriched our world with thought and word, with love and laughter. Never forget his friendly and kindly ways. May John live in God's embrace forever. It's never easy to say this final goodbye, but now we must. With heavy hearts, but also with true joy that John lived and loved, we leave him to the care of God's eternity. John, we thank you and are grateful for all that you have given to so many in your life. The love and commitment to your family, your work, Maitland City, the times that we've shared, love, laughter, tears, and many precious memories. Tenderly, reverently, and with love, we commit John Patrick Costa's body to be cremated and to be delivered into God's loving arms, and once again to be reunited with his beloved wife, Lil. May you have eternal peace of spirit, rest from your labours, and peace at the last.